Now that we have some epoxy mixed up, we can go ahead and attach our fins to the body tube. Now, since the epoxy takes a few minutes to dry, the best thing you want to do is to somehow steady your body tube, somehow get it so it's held steady somewhere, so that way you don't have to hold it while you're also trying to epoxy it. Easiest way for a small rocket like this is, I think, is just to tape it to the table. You want to make sure that the line that you're epoxying your fin to is as straight up and down as you can get it. As you can see, I've done 2 of the fins already for you, but the process is pretty simple. As long as you can keep the body tube fairly still by taping it down or something like that, you should be able just to apply a thin line of epoxy right along your line, like so. And then you're going to take your fin and press it firmly into the epoxy, keeping it as straight along the line as you can. From there, you may need to steady the fin a bit with your hand until the epoxy sets up slightly, but then it should dry on its own. Try to keep it as straight as possible. The straighter and more lines your fins are, the straighter and higher your rocket's going to fly. Now, once you have all the fins epoxied on, your next step is just to attach your nose cone and launch lugs. Now that we have our fins securely epoxied on, the next step will be to install our launch lug. This is normally a small plastic or cardboard tube that you're going to glue onto the outside of your body tube, and what this does is guides the rocket up the launch rail so it stays straight as it's increasing its speed. So to do this, we're just going to go back to using super glue, and you're going to want to glue it on your body tube about 1/3 of the way up that line you drew earlier. So we're just going to add some super glue. Since this is small, careful not to get it on your fingers. And you also don't want any glue to get onto the ends of the launch lug, because that might bind up or make the launch lug stick to your launch rail, and then your rocket could get stuck. So then go ahead and glue it on about 1/3 of the way up. And you want to make sure you get it as straight as possible again, because it'll help guide your rocket for a better flight. Okay, now once that's dried, it should dry pretty fast. We'll go ahead and start talking about our nose cone assembly. Your kit will come with a shock cord, some kind of elastic cord, and a nose cone. Now your nose cone will have a little plastic loop on it, and so you should go ahead and just tie your shock cord through that loop, just like I did here. And on the other end, it's sometimes easy to take a piece of paper and glue it to the end of your shock cord, and that'll give you a little bit more surface area for the next step, which will be gluing the shock cord inside your body tube. So for that, you can also use the super glue. You're going to want to apply a good amount of glue, because you don't want this part coming loose. Cover that paper with the glue, and then without touching the sides of the tube as best you can, stick this down as far as you can and press it to the sidewall of the tube with your finger. And hold it there really tight for a few seconds to make sure that super glue really dries in there. Okay, now that we have the shock cord attached to the inside of our body tube, the next step is going to be to attach our parachute to the shock cord. Now, easiest way to do this is to first make a loop with your shock cord and then tie a knot, but don't tighten it all the way. You want it a few inches from the top of the nose cone. Now, without tightening that, take your parachute. You want to grab all the leads from your parachute, pass them through this loop. Now, your lead should also have a loop. And you're going to want to take your parachute and pass it through that loop, like so. And you can go ahead and pull that tight. Then, go ahead and tighten the knot on your shock cord. This keeps the parachute from sliding up and down your shock cord. Once that's all tight, your parachute is now attached to the shock cord, ready to go. And that concludes building this model rocket. You have everything you need now to go ahead and launch it. Okay, next thing I'm going to show you is actually how to prep your rocket for launch. To do that, you're going to need to have a few things. First, most important, you need to have your rocket motor. You can buy these at your hobby store. They'll usually come with other essential items like your igniter, and this is actually an electric igniter that you're going to stick in your motor, and it will actually ignite it when you're ready to launch. And it'll also come with a little plastic piece known as an engine plug, which will hold the igniter in the engine once you install it. Another essential item is you want fireproof and flame retardant recovery wadding, which this is a necessity. You can buy it in little packs like this at your hobby store. And what this does is you stick it in your body tube, and it protects the plastic parachute from melting because of the hot gases in your motor. And the first step for preparing your rocket is to actually take a few sheets of the recovery wadding. You don't need a lot, it's a small rocket. Go ahead and loosely crinkle them up, and you just want to insert them into the top of your body tube. And then use some lawn item just to push them down the body tube so you have some space for your parachute. Don't pack them tight in there. Next step is to fold your parachute up. Now the easiest way to do this is to first spike it. Then you can hold it with your hand, compress it a little bit, and then fold the top in. From there, it's easiest to layer the cord on top, and then you can just roll it up. Now with that in your right hand, go ahead and tuck your shock cord into the tube. Continue tucking it in there until you get up to your parachute. And if you can see, the shock cord before the parachute is almost all the way in. And when that gets to the point where your parachute needs to go in, go ahead and stick the parachute in top end first. You want to slide that in. Be careful not to tangle it. And usually that can just be pushed in with your finger. And from there, just tuck the rest of your shock cord and slide your nose cone onto the top of the body tube like so. Next step will be to install our motor. Now, your motor is pretty simple. You just want to slide it right into the motor mount tube. It can be a little bit tricky depending how stiff you glued your retainer clip, but that should flex out of the way. And you just want to slide your motor right into the tube. And you should see the retainer clip snap back in front of it, and that'll hold the motor securely in place. After that, you don't want to install your igniter into the engine until your rocket is on the launch pad. That's for safety precautions because we don't want any accidental ignitions while we're inside. Next, we'll show you how to finally prepare your rocket for launch once you're safely outdoors and ready to go. You need a few things, of course. You're going to need a launch stand. You can buy that at your local hardware store or hobby store. And you're also going to need a launch controller. This happens to be the Estes launch controller. Now when you're ready to go, set up your igniter. Now you want to bend the leads far apart from each other because you want to make sure they aren't touching, because that'll fry your circuit before you're ready to launch. Now, what's also helpful is to bend the top part 90 degrees. When you go to insert it in your motor, this easily makes the lead stick out to the side of the rocket, which makes it much easier to install your alligator clips from your launch controller to the leads. And as I said before, since you've bent them out, your clips are good distance apart and have no danger of touching each other. Now, another note is you want to make sure that this igniter is firmly up inside your rocket motor. If it's not far enough in, you're not going to ignite the motor. Once you get up in there until it reaches a stopping point, you can go ahead and take your motor plug and just stick it up in the aft end of the engine, and that should firmly hold your igniter in place. I don't want to actually install that because, again, we're inside. After you have that hooked up, and for demonstration purposes here, I'm going to connect our launch controller leads together so we have a closed circuit. But you take your launch controller, go a safe distance away, and go ahead and test your circuit for continuity. And you can do that by inserting your safety key only when everybody's clear and you're ready to launch. You go ahead and insert that into your launch controller and press it down, and when there's continuity, your launch controller should show that with a light or some sort of audible sound. Then, after a countdown, you can go ahead and press your launch button and you're blast off, you're good to go.